She said, "Don't call me for 2 days. Girls trip only." Then her best friend asked, "What trip?" So I went to the hotel, saw her on the bed with another man, recorded a video, shared it on social media, and within minutes she was completely exposed. My name is Ethan, and I am 30 male. I never imagined that a simple afternoon would become the moment that shifted my entire life. But that is exactly how it happened. She said, "Don't call me for 2 days. Girls trip only." She hugged me, packed a small bag, and walked out as if everything was normal. But a few hours later, her best friend called and asked a question that sliced through my trust like a knife. "What trip?" That one line started a chain of truths I was never ready for. I spent that afternoon checking my phone more than usual, wondering why something inside me felt uneasy. When her phone rang on the kitchen counter and her best friend's confused voice filled the room, my entire chest tightened. I tried calling my fiancée, but she didn't answer. I texted her, but the silence that followed felt heavier with every passing minute. I told myself maybe she was busy, maybe the situation was simple, but deep in my chest, something had already cracked. When I finally called her mother, she went quiet after hearing what I discovered. Soon her father reached out too, his voice calm but filled with concern. They came over to my place without hesitation, moving with a quiet worry that was hard to Mississippi. Her mother brought sandwiches, as if holding on to normalcy would keep the situation steady. Her father looked like a man trying to understand where everything went wrong. We drove together to the hotel she mentioned before leaving. The ride was short, but every second felt like a slow descent into something darker. When we arrived, the clerk looked up a reservation without any suspicion, pointing us toward a room down a dimly lit hallway. My steps felt heavy, my heart loud, and every breath was a battle against fear. When I opened the door, she was standing beside another man. Both of them froze as if time stopped. Her parents stood behind me, shock becoming a quiet storm around us. She tried to speak, but her words fell apart before they reached us. The man looked embarrassed and claimed she told him she was single. Her mother sat down as if she had been expecting something to be wrong for a long time. Her father's disappointment was worse than anger, cutting through the room more sharply than any shout could. She tried to apologize, but her words felt empty, detached, like she didn't fully grasp the weight of what she had done. When she admitted she met the man more than once, something settled inside me. The person I thought I knew was gone. The relationship I believed in was a memory, not a reality. I told her I was leaving the room. Her parents guided me out gently, understanding the quiet collapse happening inside me. The next morning, the house felt strange without her presence. Quiet but clear. Her parents called to say she returned home and barely spoke. A close friend came over later, simply sitting with me and reminding me that trust never breaks in a single moment. It crumbles piece by piece. His words helped me see everything in sharp focus. By afternoon, she sent her first message, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. Instead, I documented everything, not out of revenge, but to protect the truth before it got lost in the versions she might try to create. That evening, her father arrived with a heavy heart, saying she tried to downplay what happened. He asked what my plans were, and I told him that whatever decision I made would be final. He nodded, respecting the clarity settling inside me. That night, she sent more messages, apologies, explanations, pleas, but none of them showed real regret, only fear of consequences. When I found out she told her friends a distorted version of the story, I realized she wasn't lonely or confused. She was trying to save her image. That was the turning point. That was when I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I went to her parents' home with 2 bags containing all her belongings. Her father opened the door before I knocked, as if he already knew what my decision was. Her mother looked sad but supportive. My fiancée sat on the couch, eyes avoiding everyone. When she asked to speak outside, I agreed. She said she wanted one more chance. She said she missed what we had. She said she only made a mistake. But the moment I mentioned she lied to her friends about what really happened, her expression shifted. She wasn't sorry for the cheating. She was sorry for losing control of the story. That was when I told her we were done. Completely. No breaks, no pauses, no later. Finished. Her reaction was not sorrow. It was frustration. She said I was overreacting. She tried to treat the situation like a simple argument instead of a deep betrayal. I didn't respond. I left the bags at the door, thanked her parents for everything, and walked away from the life I had once planned with her. Her parents reached out later, admitting that things at home had become tense. She avoided them and spent days in silence, mainly because she couldn't handle the truth spreading. I didn't gossip. I didn't attack her character. I simply sent a calm, factual message to the few people she lied to, correcting the story. Not to hurt her, just to keep honesty from being twisted. People were shocked. Some regretted believing her. Others said the signs finally made sense. Her parents confronted her, and she crumbled under the weight of facts she could no longer escape. She sent me a final message that night, accusing me of ruining her reputation. That was the last confirmation I needed. She didn't care about us. She cared about her image. I blocked her number and moved forward. The days after that felt peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. I focused on work, cleaned the house, and started living without the constant buzz of doubt. Her parents checked on me with kindness, while she remained in her room, upset that people no longer believed her carefully shaped version of events. A week later, her father and I met for coffee. He admitted she finally told the full truth. Not because she felt guilty, but because she knew there was no way to escape it. He apologized, even though none of it was his fault. Before leaving, he said something I'll never forget. Sometimes life returns the lessons people choose to ignore. Later, she sent a long email trying to justify everything, shifting blame, painting herself as lost rather than dishonest. I closed it without replying. Some endings don't need closure. They just need distance. Weeks passed, and life became calm again. I met new people, reconnected with friends, and felt present in my own life. Eventually, her parents told me she moved to another city, not for growth, but to escape the truth that followed her. That was her consequence. A story built on lies collapsing under its own weight. And I walked away with my peace, knowing honesty stood taller than every excuse she tried to build. As the weeks turned into a month, I found myself settling into a life I had forgotten was possible. A life where my thoughts weren't pulled in 100 directions and where my heart didn't carry a constant weight. I began waking up with a calm that felt unfamiliar at first, almost like borrowed peace, but with time, it started to feel like something that belonged to me. I cooked meals without thinking about whether she would like them, cleaned the house without wondering if she would complain about something, and for the first time in a long while, I enjoyed the simple rhythm of my own routine. There was a lightness in my home, a stillness that didn't feel lonely but instead felt honest, as if every room finally reflected the life I was actually living, not the illusion I had been trying to maintain. Her parents reached out from time to time, checking in without pushing the conversation in a direction that would reopen old wounds. They often spoke with a kind sadness, as if they were watching their daughter pay the price for choices they couldn't protect her from. They told me she was still struggling to accept what happened, not because she missed our relationship, but because she couldn't understand how her carefully managed stories had fallen apart. She had always believed she could control the reactions of the people around her, but now she faced a truth that didn't bend to her narrative. She had lost trust, respect, and stability, and none of it came from malice. It came from her own actions echoing back at her. One evening, I sat on my porch as the sun slipped behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. For the first time since everything fell apart, I allowed myself to truly reflect on the meaning of closure. I realized closure wasn't something she could give me, not through apologies, not through explanations, and not even through regret. Closure was something I had gained when I looked at the situation without emotion and accepted that she had shown me who she really was. Once that truth settled in my mind, the pain stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like a memory, one that would fade gently instead of staying sharp. In those quiet moments, I began rebuilding my relationship with myself. I went back to the gym, started reading again, and reconnected with friends who had slowly drifted away because I was too busy trying to maintain a relationship that had been cracking for far longer than I realized. My friends didn't ask for every detail. They just welcomed me back with the kind of warmth that reminded me what real support felt like. Daniel, especially, checked in often, not out of pity but out of genuine concern. He reminded me that healing isn't a race and that sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is walk away from what hurts them, even if the world says to stay. As life continued to move forward, I found myself opening up to new experiences without the fear that had once held me back. One afternoon, I signed up for a weekend hiking group, something I had always wanted to do but avoided because my fiancée would complain about the time it took or how it didn't fit into her plans. The group met early Saturday morning, and as we climbed through trails that twisted between trees and sunlight, I felt my mind unwind in a way it hadn't in years. Every step felt like a quiet statement. I was building a life not bound by someone else's choices. Around the same time, I noticed that people treated me differently, not because of pity, but because I carried myself with a kind of clarity that only comes after surviving something difficult. Even in small conversations, I spoke more honestly, less worried about how others might perceive me. That change wasn't something I tried to force. It happened naturally as I learned to move without the weight of mistrust on my shoulders. Healing became less about forgetting the past and more about redefining what I allowed into my present. Her parents contacted me one final time, letting me know she had moved again, this time to a smaller apartment in a different state. They said she was still trying to piece together a life after the fallout, but it was clear she was struggling not with heartbreak but with the realization that her actions had real consequences she couldn't avoid or rewrite. Hearing that didn't bring me satisfaction or revenge. If anything, it brought a quiet understanding that some people only learn through losing what they never thought they would. I didn't reach out to her, not even out of curiosity. I no longer needed to know how she was doing because her path and mine had completely diverged. She was a chapter, not a future, and my story didn't require her presence to continue. As time passed, I found myself standing in a version of my life that felt real, steady, and honest. I met new people, some who came and went, and some who stayed long enough to bring fresh warmth into my days. I didn't rush anything. I didn't force anything. I simply allowed life to move naturally. And in that process, I learned that peace isn't something you chase. It's something you allow when you stop holding on to what hurts you. One night, as I sat on my porch again, watching the stars scatter across the sky like quiet symbols of possibility, I realized I had finally reached a place where the story no longer needed a lesson or a warning or an explanation. It was simply something that happened, something that ended, something that freed me, and in that freedom I finally began again. Not with fear, not with doubt, but with the quiet confidence of someone who survived the storm and learned how to stand in the sun without apology.